Good evening. My name is Frankie Love, and the views and opinions in this video are mine and mine alone. And if you don't like foul language, I suggest you turn the video off right now. That's right, Frankie Love, America's favorite indie wrestler, is back, live and on YouTube. Tonight, I come to you to talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is somebody that nobody gives a shit is dead, Brad Renfro. Brad Renfro, who you ask? Huh? Brad who? That's right. Brad was that little punk kid from The Client with Susan Sarandon and Tommy Lee Jones. He's also that guy that was seduced by some old Hitler guy in Apt Pupil. Which again, two movies you probably haven't seen if you're like young, but if you're my age, 36, you might have seen one of those movies. Actually, believe it or not, The Client was a good movie. But getting on to that, let's talk about how I first heard about Brad Renfro dying. Sitting at my home, drinking beers, popping Percocets with a good friend of mine, James Fullington. You wrestling fans would know James as the Sandman. So anyway, I'm sitting here with James, and we had TMZ on, and it came on the screen that Brad was dead. As far as I'm concerned, no big loss because, surprise, surprise, what did he die from? Drugs and alcohol. Gee, should you be surprised that an actor at the age of 25 died from a drug and alcohol overdose? No, because if you're dying at that age, that's usually what you're dying from. So anyway, me and Jim are here popping pills, drinking beer, which is okay because that's what us wrestlers do in our spare time, drugs and alcohol. So anyway, we're sitting here, the phone rings, and it's another wrestler, friend of mine, Jerome Young. You folks would know him as New Jack. I'm talking to him, I'm like, yo, Jerome, did you just hear about Brad Renfro dying? He's like, who? That Nazi kid from that Hitler movie? It's like, I don't give a fuck about him, I'm New Jack, bitch! It's like, okay, Jerome, chill, calm the fuck down, what's wrong with you? So, we were talking to Jerome, I was talking to Jerome because, myself, Jerome, and James, we have an upcoming show, independent show, that we had to talk about, who's gonna drive and that kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, I got off the phone with Jerome, and, I don't know if you people noticed a few weeks ago when this all happened, Stone Cold Steve Austin was in New York. Once again, former pro wrestler. To me, he's Steve Williams, because, hey, that's his real name for all you marks out there. Anyway, it kind of surprised me that Steve actually came to my house because I really didn't know Steve knew where I lived. So, Steve comes over, sees James here. Now, keep in mind, Steve and James did have a short feud when Steve came to ECW in the mid-90s. Anyway, so what happened was, Steve likes to drink beers. James likes to drink beers. So they decided that they were going to have a Stairway to Hell match, which many ECW fans know, you put the ladder up and all sorts of shit like that. Obviously, we weren't going to do that in my apartment, but, so we just started having a drinking contest. No problem. Actually, problem. You see, as I said earlier, it's not good to mix drugs and alcohol. Although Steve Williams, wasn't drinking. I mean, well, he was drinking, but he wasn't doing the drugs that me and James were doing. Anyway, long story short, they start beating the shit out of each other. Spills outside into the hallway of where I live. And I live on the second floor, so they're beating the hell out of each other. And they fall down the flight of stairs, and shit happens, and down the first flight is nothing but a glass window pane. So, boom, they go right through it. My downstairs neighbor, he's a fucking asshole, plain and simple. He's a jerk off. And again, everybody I've ever had live downstairs from me has been an asshole. When I first moved to where I am now, the guy ended up dying of, a drug overdose. See, even common fucking dirtbags can die of a drug overdose. And then the guy that moved in after that didn't even know that some guy died in the apartment when he bought the place, but that's besides the point. This jerk-off used to beat his wife. You know, I think he moved to Nebraska and bought a farm or some shit. Once again, something I don't give a shit about, and I'm sure you don't give a shit about. So, you know, this jerk-off that lives downstairs from me now calls the cops. Cops show up, you know, a lot of shit. Like, what the fuck's the matter with you guys? You know, and with Steve Williams, James Fullington, you know, being celebrities, the cops really don't want to arrest them. They want their fucking autographs because, once again, cops too are jerk-offs. But anyway, we won't get into that. So, they're like, what the fuck's wrong with you guys? How the hell can you do this kind of shit? They're like, what? It ain't our fault. It's Brad Renfro's fault. And they're like, Brad who? You know, that fucking actor that died from a drug overdose a couple of weeks ago. Actually, today. They're like, who? You know, Brad Renfro from The Client. Like, oh yeah, that little fucker's dead? Good riddance. Alright, that's my opinion on the day and the life and times that no one gives a shit about Brad Renfro. Tune in again soon when I talk about somebody that people actually cared about. Heath Ledger. Godspeed.